pakutanga Mwari akasika denga nenyika nezvese zviri mairi pamazuva matanhatu nemusi wechinomwe akazorora nekuriropafadza zuva resabata
akati
rangarira sabata urichengete riri jene musi wechinomwe isabata musi wechinomwe isabata amazuva matanhatu bata mabasa ako nemusi wechinomwe zorora iwe nevana vako varanda vako nemweni wako zvifuyo zvako nezvese zvako ngazvizorore rangarira sabata urichengete riri jene musi wechinomwe isabata musi wechinomwe isabata ngariere sabata musi wechinomwe isabata.
Welcome everyone. Welcome back to our conversation on entrepreneurship, the Christian perspective. I'm sure you have been following and you are having a great time. My name is Mazorodze. I'm a business practitioner by training. And today we want to continue the conversation we started last time. We were looking at Christian entrepreneurship and we were saying to ourselves, when God, you have realized that God is the one who gave you this understanding to be able to start enterprises, what then should we do to start them? Because I guess this is the conversation that's critical for most people, because we have heard so many people, motivational speakers who come to you and say, you can achieve this, you can achieve this. But how do you actually do it? How do you actually put it into practice? I think this is a difficult question when we are in the secular world, and more difficult if we come to the Christian setting, because you are supposed to be a Christian, but at the same time you are supposed to be doing these things that we are looking at. And one of the things we are going to be talking about today, which we are going to borrow from our last conversation, is this whole idea of recognizing God's leadership and presence as we do things. Because, you know, God is a very creative being, if you were to allow me to use that, because he starts things. And if you look at the creation account, it says God created ex nihilo. When we say ex nihilo, it means out of nothing. So God uses nothing to start something. And this is what the ability that God has given to each and every one of us. And in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 and 7, it says, God says, to the Godhead, let us create men in our own image. So it means if God had this ability to be creative and start things, this is an ability that he has also given to us. And what then does it take for us to start something? And if you speak to people who are scholars and accomplished business people, they will tell you that every business enterprise starts with an idea. You need to be creative. You need to be someone who is imaginative. You need to be able to imagine things that are not ordinary. So this is what distinguishes successful businesses from copycats, all right? Maybe, I mean, for lack of a better example, Mr. Strive Masiwa started the mobile network business that he operates so on today, Econet Wireless. So if you are that individual who then says, because someone started a business in this area, I also want to go there. This is the reason why some businesses sometimes are not successful. Rather, most businesses, because we tend to want to copy instead of being original in our own ways. And what we are learning today is we need to be original. This is the God that created that. He is an original God. He imagines and starts things from nothing. And this is the ability that Christian business people need to realize upfront that they possess. God created us with the ability to imagine. And so in the business world, the term that they would use is innovation. You need to be innovative. You need to imagine things that have not been there. And to talk about this whole idea of innovation, maybe let me start by centering and anchoring around this whole idea of a dream, all right? A dream for you to be able to start an enterprise. And this doesn't need money. I mean, if you follow the conversation, we haven't even gotten to the stage where we are saying, now go look for money. We are simply saying, we want to start ventures, all right? So we need an idea. Where does the idea come from? And I mean, who else to give us this insight besides the wise men in the good book? So in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, Solomon has this to say. So he says, for a dream cometh through the multitude of business. If you follow the thinking here, Solomon is very clear. He is saying, for a business to be successful, it started as an idea, as a dream, all right? So someone dreamt about this, and as they dreamt about it, they implemented the dream, and ultimately it became. And he's also saying, a fool's voice is known by multitudes of words. So we are not talking about people who just go around telling people, I want to start something, okay? So we are talking about people who really have this whole idea of wanting to start something, and they actually get dirty in trying to get that thing to work. So I wouldn't want to deceive us and suggest that, or give you the idea that these are going to be easy things, all right? So you realize that if you understand the way God gave Adam the instruction, it was very clear. He says, tend the garden. And when you are looking after a garden, it's no small feat, because what you need to do is you need to be constantly aware of where something is, why it's there, how best it can. And they say, largely if you are someone who is in the business sector, agribusiness sector, and the agricultural industry, it's a very scientific area. So you want to understand that Adam was a very scientific being. And one author of mine says, the other reason why, we are not very successful in agriculture is because we have not employed science to the extent in which we are supposed to employ it. And it's very clear here. So God is saying, if you want to be someone who starts things, you need to be able to dream. And he says, if there are three phases in trying to start a business. One of them is what people call reality. So this is a conversation you have a lot of times. People will say, be realistic. And, if you are in the reality zone of wanting to start something, you do the ordinary. You are the copycat. What you do every day is defined by what's already happening. You are not going to be successful because you are defining. So you realize that things that actually change the world are not things that are present today. Because if they were there today, then they will not change the world. So for us as Christians, we need to realize this, that, every time. So even if you look at the life of Jesus, he was, a revelatory, and the things he said were actually revolutionary, if you appreciate him. And at one point in time, I remember this is the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus says, it has been said, do not commit adultery. But I say, if any man looks at a woman lustfully, he has committed adultery. So if you understand the setting, the setting of that conversation, you realize that during this time, Jesus was not treated as a rabbi by the clergy of their time. And do not commit adultery was a Mosaic statement. So for Jesus to come and say, but I say, he is simply saying, he has a better perspective. He is introducing a new way of thinking. So Jesus, the way you look at him, he always did things in the non-traditional way. So if you are someone who is then seeking to establish a business, don't dream the ordinary dream. The ordinary dream has always failed. The success rates are very low there. But you also want to get to this level where, the entrepreneurship is a domain where you are trying to bring together reality and insanity, for lack of the proper conversation there. Because some of the things you need to imagine are almost near delusional in the way that you look at them, because you are trying to start things that you've never. I want to imagine when Steve Jobs was imagining the iPhone, all right? And he said, there were so many buttons on these gadgets, and he says, I just want a gadget with one button. And then the world looked at him and said, the best phone of the moment was the BlackBerry. So the BlackBerry was there, and people were saying, it cannot get better than this. Even the Pentagon itself, the American army and, security forces were using the BlackBerry. It was the only approved gadget. And Steve Jobs comes and says, I want a gadget with one device, with one button. And he did that. It looked like he was dreaming out of this world. People looked at him like he was insane. So businesses themselves are like that. I want to be sure if there were beings that were watching on the day that God created, and God stood over this planet and said, let there be light. I'm sure this was, revolutionary for angels and all the other beings that were there, because they are seeing God doing things that have never been done. There is nothing. So men need something to start something, but God from nowhere. So this is the whole idea that we are having a conversation around here. We need to be able to dream. And Solomon is saying, if without dreams, there are no businesses. So principle number one, be able to dream, but dream the dreams that bring the change that you are looking for. So how do you become successful in trying to start a venture? Ensure that you identify the needs and look for a way of solving the problems that society is facing today that is different from the traditional way of doing it. This is what makes successful enterprises. And the other bit that we need to understand about this idea of dreaming, we are discussing here what we are calling how to start the journey, but the first step is actually having achievable dreams. And it says, if you read the life of Jesus, there's one author that says this about the life of Jesus. He says, throughout his life on earth, Jesus was an earnest and constant worker. He expected much, therefore he attempted much. So if you get this thinking around what Jesus did, and as Jesus is coming onto the stage here, he is saying he is going to set up a totally different way of how things are done at that time. And he says, for Jesus himself, he never tried small things. And you realize the other thing that's stopping many people from doing something today is they want to do things that are easy. And we are learning here about Jesus that, he always attempted much. And in business is the same as well. If you are trying to start a venture, you actually need to try things that have not been done. So Jesus is giving us the principle here. We need to attempt much. So the first step is you need to be dreaming, all right? Dream big. Give us that picture of where you want to be, where people have never been before. There's a frenzy going around today where, the Billionaire Club of those that have the monies are saying they want to start a new industry where people travel to space. In the last few days, we have seen these things happening. Richard Branson, took a spaceship to space. Before you knew it, Jeff Bezos was on the same. And these are people who are doing things that have never been done. And they are saying to themselves, they wanted to become ordinary for someone to buy a ticket to fly into space and come back. This is absurd if you think about it. But this is $1 billion industry in the making. And the question we're asking is, what's different about them that you don't possess? Because we are not yet talking about the monies here. We are just talking about the idea. They sat down and said, there is money to be made in going to space. This is what they thought. And I'm sure if you were to listen to them the first time, you would say, that's insane. Who would want to travel to space? But now you are beginning to see the noise going up and up. And we are saying, as we try to start businesses, thinking about this, and we are saying, this is also what we are looking for. There is nothing unholy about dreaming big. And we want to make it very clear out there that, being a Christian does not mean you cease to think. Actually, Christianity gives you the biggest obligation to be a thinker, because our God is a thinker. And, one author says, by the time we die, we would have used 5% of our brain capacity. And it's a shame, because we have the ability to do things that have not been imagined. But we have allowed, circumstances to shape us, define us. And for that reason, we have remained simply either paupers or people that are seeking for employment. And we are saying here, there is a way in which this can be done. And he says, Jesus, as he was doing his things, he was someone who attempted much. So as you start the journey, you need to be able to dream. You need to try big things. All right. So let's, I just thought maybe we would take a very deep dive into some of these biblical figures who achieved it. But we also bring it into our modern day life. And, you think about Abraham. So God says to Abraham, I want you to go to a place that you have never been before. I'm going to make you big there. All right. So if you imagine that scenario, this is what we would call the insane space of thinking. So Abraham, wakes up one morning and he says, I'm leaving. And the people say, where are you going? He says, I don't know, but God knows. All right. So if you listen to that kind of thinking, you realize that this is someone who is on a journey, but they are not yet sure where this thing is taking them, but they are prepared to go anyway. So this is what you also see when we talk about, business in its own dimensions. So the Christian world, there's a lot of things to teach us, which the, secular world is using today, which we need to be using ourselves as Christians. And Abraham walks and he goes. And by the time he gets to Canaan, he's one guy who's staying in tents. But what has he achieved? And, what did he do there? He says, entrepreneurs, if you want to think about it, I'll give you this quotation from one established author in this space. So they say entrepreneurs are different from small business owners, okay? And these guys argued that, small business owners were concerned primarily with securing income to meet their immediate needs. And they did not, usually engage in innovation, that idea of dreaming. So it wasn't there. And it says, whereas entrepreneurs had higher achievement and motivation, risk-taking, they were inclined to innovation and change. So entrepreneurship is all centered around this whole idea of innovation, change, dreaming, all right? So we would then want to understand it. How do you actually dream, okay? How do you dream? The question you would ask is, can someone be taught to dream? But how do you actually dream? That's the conversation we want to have next. And as we continue these conversations, I just want to invite you to tune in as we continue exploring what then does it take for someone to be able to dream. And what is a dream in its own right? It's a necessary requirement, but what is it?
Brightly beams our Father's mercy. From his lighthouse evermore, but to us he gives the keeping of the lights along the shore. Let the lower lights be burning, send a gleam across the way. Some poor fainting, struggling seaman, you may rescue, you may serve. Dark the night of sin has settled, loud the angry billows roll. Eager eyes are watching, longing for the lights along the shore. So let the lower lights be burning, send a gleam across the way. Some poor fainting, struggling seaman, you may rescue, you may serve. Dream your feeble lamp, my brother. Some poor sailor tempest tossed, trying now to make the harbor in the darkness may be lost. Let the lone one lights be burning, send a gleam across the way. Some poor fainting, struggling sinner, you may rescue, you may serve. You may rescue.